Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third annual Marikana Commemoration Lecture titled 10 Years of Learning. A very special welcome to the widows and families joining in virtually from the Northwest, Eastern Cape, and Lesotho. And with that, I would like us to please honor a moment of silence for the 44 who lost their lives. Thank you. My name is Luvuyo Matasa, and I will be your host this afternoon. Before we go too far into the program, let me take this opportunity to say thank you for making the time to join us today. Siyabulela, re a leboga. This year marks a decade since many of us watched in disbelief as daily news reports updated our nation and the world of the tragic deaths of people who were sons, brothers, husbands, and fathers. This week's groundswell of memorial events add to a 10-year chorus of concerned and frustrated voices that stand in solidarity with the women, the families, and the injured survivors to say never again. Today's program of reflection hones in on the past 3 years to not only shed light on some of the lessons learned, but through our keynote address, unpack complexities we contend with as a nation, to offer recommendations on the deep work we must all commit to in order to make renewal real for the impacted families, affected communities around Marikana, and key partners at local, district, provincial, and national levels. Today's program is about exploring different ways we can work together to give a fitting tribute to honor the fallen 44, their children and families. It also serves as an update on a journey to convene a series of courageous conversations intended to co-create sound strategies to help us all overcome the multiple traumas inflicted on our nation's collective psyche during our most recent and far more distant histories. Today, we convene on 10 years of learning with a hope to inspire constructive engagement on how to create better programs into our future. A bit of housekeeping. Please note that our contributions have been pre-recorded to minimize technical glitches that may come with varying strengths of signal and connectivity. Our program will work through 3 pillars of honor, engage, create, and close off with a screening of an episode from a new documentary titled Unwavering Strength, The Untold Marikana Story. And with that, I would like to invite the technical team to cue our first message from the patron of the Marikana Renewal, Archbishop Thabo Makgoba.
Sisters and brothers, fellow South Africans, it is with sadness and trepidation that I address you today as we remember the horror we felt at the event which occurred at Marikana 10 years ago. The memory of those terrible moments will never be erased. They will live with us forever, even as we work to heal the wounds they created and rebuild the lives of those devastated by the loss of loved ones. I want to say first that it has been an honor and a privilege for me as part of the work being done by a group, including the new owners of the mine, to visit and consult with many of the families of those who tragically lost their lives. As I have said before to those families, I have been moved and deeply humbled by my conversations with them, and I respect and admire those who have been willing to join the difficult journey of healing and renewal. It has been hard. It has been tough. It has called for strength and patience. And you have my admiration for the way in which you have shown those qualities. 10 years ago, the tragedy that unfolded at the Kopi lifted a lid on simmering social tensions and changed the way the world saw mine or miners forever. It forced the mining industry, the nation, and particularly our leaders to pause. The pause gave us the courage to reach across our divisions, to sit down together and talk about the things that have hurt us most. So although I address you with sadness, I also address you with hope, heartened by how far we have come, but aware that we still have far to go. What we are beginning to see is the first green shoots of progress in addressing the issues which led to the tragic events of 10 years ago and dealing in a creative way with their consequences. What is so beautiful about the hope that has emerged from deep wounds is that it has come with the willingness to keep an open mind while we hold firm to our values. The last 10 years have taught us that we can only ensure lasting change through collaboration, that we can make progress if we are willing to listen to those who have differing opinions, and that we can move forward with honesty, transparency, and most of all, trust. For me, the most poignant lesson have been those which have taught us to listen and to nurture. As we leave the last 10 years behind, of course, as I said, we can never leave it behind. As we carry it into the future, but transformed, it is my hope that out of the horror of Marikana, from the suffering the massacre has caused, something positive can emerge, that we will come to see what happened as a turning point in which a community and as a nation resolve to do better in the future. A turning point at which we were all encouraged to hold space for one another, acknowledge our collective struggles, and make real progress towards building better lives for all of us. It is only if we succeed in doing this that the future generations will look back and acknowledge that the event was indeed a catalyst for real change. South Africa, dear friends, is a troubled and hurting place at the moment. May the Marikana renewal process demonstrate to our nation how our suffering and pain can give birth to healing and renewal. Of course, as an Anglican archbishop or a Christian leader, I draw from the sacred texts and my tradition that out of darkness, out of death, we resurrect hope and life. So God bless you, God loves you, and so do I.
Thank you, Siyabulela, Archbishop Makgoba. Thank you for reminding us to pause and reflect in order to cultivate the green shoots of hope for the journey ahead. You mentioned the importance of holding space to listen to one another in order to build trust and honor the lives of those we lost. And with that, I invite our technical team to cue today's honor reflection, an example of the kind of listening and multi-layered collaboration it will take to arrive at a fitting memorial that helps tell the story of those who died.
We've set up a platform for all stakeholders to engage on. We've onboarded Reimagine SA that facilitates this process for us as a partner. There's going to be 4 pizzos. So pizza 1 has been concluded quite successfully, a lot of buy-in and also excitement in terms of this initiative. And we've also set up task teams for the various stakeholders to be represented in, to put forward the designs and the concepts in terms of this initiative. It was also critical to make sure that we get the inputs from the 1608 beneficiaries and people that's been left behind. Those that's really most affected by what transpired. It is a memorial site, so there's a lot of sensitivities. There's a lot of political capital around this as well. Then how do you incorporate all these dynamics into the equation, but also somehow remove it and look at what lies at the heart of this memorial site? What shape and form does this memorial site take on? For us, it was really to be a commemoration. It was really to bring people of different backgrounds together, to almost celebrate the lives of those lost, but also to remember them going forward.
Thank you for that honor reflection. And without taking too much more time, I invite the team to cue a message from Ndate Joel Dominic Lehupa, a member of the 44 families who lost loved ones during the tragic events of 2012. He is also part of the recently elected 9-member family task team that, among other responsibilities, plans to play an active role in oversight in the developments of the Memorial Park. Team, over to you.
Greetings to everyone. This is Mr. Lehupa representing the families that lost their loved ones at the incident that took place 10 years ago. It has been a long journey indeed for a renewal process to take place. This is in line with consulting task team representatives for the families who lost their loved ones in the 2012 August Marikana massacre, whereby the media was constantly reporting on the deaths at Lonmin mine over a period of days before the one that actually caught the eyes of the world and the nation, which was the 16th. This having taken place over some days affected 2 parties in that is, some were deployed by the mine and lost their lives, whereas some were protesting or actually on strike about the wages against the mine. So in the processes of deployment versus strike, lives were lost and led to families being divided into 2 parts. For 10 years, therefore, the families have been actually crying loud for the compensation, whereby at some stage this appeared to be that the mine should take responsibility of their employees who were killed on duty during this whole incident, and on the other hand, that the state take responsibility of the killing of mines who were on strike by deploying the police to kill or to shoot to kill. There has not been a healing, therefore, because in this whole process, no one took responsibility or was held responsible and thus account. Unfortunately, the president of the country at present was then a shareholder at Lonmin Mines. As much as coincidentally so, the families are still demanding that the president must come and address them, this which he promised to do publicly at some point. The families are still asking the president to come, and they believe there will be healing that takes place if he does come. This is a unanimous call by all the families, as I've already stated that there have been two parties that were divided initially. Let me put it clear that families are unhappy that people are making money out of their pain in different ways, claiming that they are assisting the families, documentaries and all that in the past that took place. We are asking for accountability from the side of the state and justice to be served. Let us put it on record that since Sibanye took over, although with some unfulfilled promises, there has been at least a means of uniting the families who lost their families and loved ones at large at Marikana. And with the involvement of Reimagine SA, families are now united and are saying in one voice that they need to be compensated and once more people to be held accountable. That is, they see justice happening. We are indeed appreciating what the intervention of Reimagine SA brings into the closing the overdue gaps that should have been closed a long time ago. Keep it up, Reimagine SA. We also appreciate the educating of our children. The camps that we see taking place at the moment in life, whereby it is in the process of making those children to feel belonging. So that does not go unnoticed. It is being noticeable and appreciated. We acknowledge that Sibanye has noticed that something needs to be done, but we are saying, could this be please done to accommodate all the families that have been involved, so that there will be unity and that there will be a healing process. Remember, these two parties whereby others were on duty, others were on strike. What initially nearly happened was that factions were emanating between the two sides. But now that Sibanye came back and then said, no, I'll be looking at the whole families whom were affected. So that has really started a good and a positive note on the healing process. Let's just work together on this and then keep each other on board on the things and the plans that we are doing, and hoping that the promises that the state has initially also made will be actually coming true, and then they practice what they are preaching, so that the people, the families get compensated and are at ease with themselves. Thank you very much for the opportunity to represent the families given to me as a member of the task team that when Sibanye with Reimagine SA called all the families to reunite them, then the task team and unity was born out of that. Keep it up, but please let us make sure that the families get through the healing process by all the possible means on the things that they are crying about them to be fulfilled, so that they can say they are putting this whole thing behind them and just be a mourning process like anyone who has lost a family member. Thank you very much once more.
Enkosi Ntate Lehupa, for your reflection and highlighting the realities the families still contend with. It's important to note that different consultations with the widows and families culminated in us hosting a pitso to help us all build a common understanding of what they had to live with over the past 10 years. Team, please cue the engaged reflection, which will also give some insight into the Letsema process.
We anticipate that pitso, which is in Bizo, would continue. This is a very critical step where we would allow people to really speak openly about what's in their hearts. We as Sibanye are playing a role as well, where we would come in here to listen with an intent of humbling ourselves to the pain that the families have gone through, as well as what their aspirations of what healing should look like.
This has been a culmination of a journey of close to 18 months. In these 18 months, we've engaged a variety of different stakeholders, and the main in trying to get a collective understanding of the very many moving parts of what it means to bring healing, or at least support a process that is intended to bring healing to families, to people who've lost a loved one.
This moment is just a moment of hope and a moment of anticipation for what could come out of this. We think that there's so much opportunity out of this pitso, opportunity to engage and reflect, opportunity to correct, and to ensure that there is no repetition of the events that unfolded in 2012. I think that this is an opportunity for widespread conversations on substantive issues.
Seeing the very many theories, the very many investigations and research that has been done come to real life and interface with the people who have lived this journey for the past 10 years. So we hope to learn. We hope that people bring a spirit of collaboration, and we hope that people bring a spirit of learning into understanding what people are going through. This conversation and journey needs a great deal of empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of people who have lost someone. Our conversations in the days to follow hope to facilitate a greater understanding, collective understanding from the parties, such that we can learn better on how to walk this road together. Learn together so that we can stop having these families relive the traumas that they've experienced in an interest to better understand. And we, along with others who have raised their hands to lend a hand to these families, hope to join hands today and continue the journey ahead, and hopefully bring rise to a solution that is satisfactory to them as the families.
We'll work with the NGOs, we'll work with the municipality, we'll work with the traditional leaders, we will work with the families and their legal representatives if needed, and we are certain that this courageous conversation will lead to a different future for Marikana, different future for the children of the deceased, different future for the families, and a collective healing process for everybody.
The engaged reflection is but a small component of a much bigger, more complex picture of the journey ahead. And to help us reflect on the scale of efforts required to make meaningful change, I invite the team to cue our keynote address from Professor Adam Habib, Director of the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. Team, over to you.
The people of Marikana, the widows, families, and loved ones of the miners that were so tragically killed, the stakeholders in Marikana, Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, Minister Gwede Mantashe, CEO Neil Froneman, comrades and friends in South Africa and elsewhere in the world. August 16th will forever be etched in the minds of South Africans, given the tragic events of that day 10 years ago. The killing of 34 miners in a tragedy under any circumstances. But it is even more painful to know that it happened under the tutelage of a democratic government, a mere 18 years after the formal end of apartheid. This memorial and the many other remembrances we have reflects a collective desire to ensure that this tragedy, or something akin to it, is never again repeated. But if this is to be realized, then our conversations and deliberations need to go beyond critique and blame, to also think through ways and measures to heal our divides and address our systemic challenges. I cannot and will not ask the children, wives, and family members to forgive those that perpetrated this act. I have no right to make such a request. This is only for them to decide. What I can say is that we as a collective society, in Marikana, in South Africa as a whole, cannot avert another disaster like this unless we learn to govern and manage our affairs differently. We can find blame for the massacre, and there is much to go around. We can accuse a mining industry that has gone on for more than a century, enrich some, and dispossess so many. We can also blame a government whose cadre deployment measures and patronage appointments have crippled municipal service delivery and enabled corruption on a large scale. The effects of this have been devastating. Not only has it led to a police force that is largely ineffective, but it is also prone to extreme acts of violence in managing protests. The consequences were deadly and tragic for the communities of Marikana, who were on the receiving end of municipal incompetence and police violence. We could also blame the state of our unions, who are meant to represent workers, but spend so much of their time fighting each other for access to resources, and whose mobilization of workers is also so often violent prone. They too push the boundaries of what is acceptable, as we have seen so often in violent actions and counteractions around the country. We can blame all of these actors, but if we only stop there, we will not avoid the repeat of these tragedies somewhere else, and we will not heal the divides of our past. So what do we do? First, we never forget. But we let the rage and motivation thereof lead not to violence or emotional reaction, but to interventions that change our circumstances, both personal and systemic, so that these tragedies do not happen again. Second, we start, as government has so often suggested, by building a social pact. But such a social pact will not emerge through some grand agreement in a Lokhotla at a national level. This has been the modus operandi of the presidency over the last few years, and it is bound to fail. This is because social pacts are built on the implicit foundation of trust by citizens that their circumstances will change by allowing these interventions. But such trust does not exist in South Africa. Our citizens have heard it all before. Promises by politicians, both ruling politicians and oppositional politicians, that things will change. And then years go by, and all we have to show for it is more rich politicians and their business handlers who have feathered their own nest egg for themselves and their families. The only way out of this tragedy is to build citizens' trust by small local actions that demonstrate short-term benefits for citizens themselves. As this happens, so too will trust get built, on which further interventions could be established. Some of this has already been undertaken, both by governments and Sibanye-Stillwater, through the Marikana renewal process under the leadership of Archbishop Thabo Makgoba. This renewal process is defined by the following pillars: honor, engage, and create. The commitment to provide widows with houses and to educate the children of the miners are important elements of this initiative. I am told that we have our first doctoral graduate from these interventions. These are important first steps. But we now need more systemic interventions that enable the development of a more inclusive socio-economic and spatial environment. What would this involve? It would require an economic and social investment into Marikana as a community. Schools, hospitals, community centers need to be built and developed. Townships need to be upgraded, suburbs developed, sanitation, water and electricity modernized and made widely available. Local businesses need to be developed, not only those that are downstream businesses of mining, but also businesses that enable recreation and services for a thriving community. There needs to be an explicit investment in enabling the development of spatial communities across the class, race, and ethnic divides. Essentially, what we require is the building of inclusive communities as envisaged in our Constitution. None of this can happen without building a local social pact. It is going to require businesses like Sibanye-Stillwater to make investments into the local community through the tax regime, both national corporate and local municipal, and through additional corporate social investment initiatives. But it will also require government, particularly local government, to take seriously the appointment of capable people and the delivery of social services. It will also require national government to ring-fence investment into the region and into the local community. And finally, it will require unions to be focused less on fighting each other and more on representing their members. It also requires us, and it requires union leaders to be less ideologically rigid and more pragmatic with a view to finding solutions to contemporary challenges. None of this will be easy. It would mean insisting on corporates to take on their social obligations seriously and on having the courage to call out corrupt and inefficient practices, both within it and on the part of government officials. Too often, corporates become complicit partners to official corruption. But it would also require local communities to focus on appointing political representatives at the municipal level that are less focused on spewing ideological rhetoric and more directed to finding pragmatic solutions to the challenges confronted by the community. They need to be focused on how to get better teachers and doctors and nurses at schools and hospitals and clinics respectively, and how to ensure that public infrastructure is not vandalized. They also need to ensure that their access to offices is not used as an excuse to procure contracts through their families and through their friends. And it will require us to call out union officials and others and socially exclude them when they are intent on enabling internecine conflict. All of this is about building a local social pact. And it is multiple versions of these social pacts around South Africa that will return trust to the citizenry and enable the broader national social pact on which South Africa's development agenda can be built. It is truly a daunting task. But imagine building this agenda from the ashes of Marikana. Can there be a more fitting tribute to the miners that perished on that fateful day on 16th August 2012? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Habib, for challenging us to find contemporary solutions to address the challenges confronted not only by the 44 families and those who were injured during 2012, but the many in our society that continue to suffer the emotional and psychological injuries that come with unemployment and other social insecurities. But to share examples of investment in livelihood programs that can initiate alternative economies now in order to grow and live beyond life of mine, I invite the team to share today's creation reflection.
The CREATE concept was around working together with stakeholders to co-create a new reality for the Marikana on the back of the tragic incidents of 2012. The program for socio-economic development in Marikana comprises social and labor plans, corporate social responsibility, as well as alternative economic activities. We do monitor the social and labor plans, obviously, because it's a regulated process, but over and above that, we are delivering programs in the areas of health, education, road infrastructure, water and sanitations, and alternative economic programs. The projects that we are delivering are divided into two areas. The first area is programs that are in support of government's social delivery programs. That is where we're focusing on schools, road infrastructure, sanitation and health facilities. But we recognize also that in order to catalyze the creation of jobs, we need to get involved in alternative economic programs in the areas of agriculture, in the areas of industrialization. So we are pushing together with other stakeholders to ensure that we get involved in those programs. Some of the programs that we do have got immediate feedback, like a clinic. You have people now having access to health which is closer to the areas where we live, or a school which is easier to determine from an impact perspective, in that children are able to get access to education. Others have got long lead times in terms of impact. You can imagine if you are catalyzing economic activities, that economy needs to grow, those jobs need to be created, and we're hopeful that in collaborating with the participants as well as other funders in the area, we will be in a position to grow those programs going forward. All the projects that we deliver are successful because we work in partnership with the various stakeholders. Most important is our partnership with government that has enabled us to deliver social infrastructure. We also do partner with private entities to ensure that we catalyze job creation in various projects such as your honey production project. We will be involved in an agri-hub in partnership with MDA, RMA, and many other partners who are interested in the sustainable development of the communities of Marikana.
Thank you, Sister Absile. And the takeaway is partners interested in the sustainable development of the community of Marikana. To help shed light on the thinking that went into the journey traveled by Sibanye-Stillwater over the past 3 years, I invite the team to cue the reflection from the global CEO, Mr. Neil Von.
Good afternoon and welcome. At the outset, I want to thank those who have participated in this event today, both as speakers and as participants. When we at Sibanye-Stillwater launched this commemoration event 3 years ago, we did so with a dual intention. Firstly, to honor and remember those who died at Marikana in 2012, and secondly, to encourage and stimulate thought leadership and critical discourse on the issues that face us as a society today, particularly in our mining industry and in the districts where we operate. In honoring and remembering those who died 10 years ago, we do so genuinely and with sorrow. But we also hope and believe that our actions in honoring the past, engaging in the present, and creating a new future speak louder than words. Even though Sibanye-Stillwater did not even exist at the time of the tragic events at Marikana, when we acquired Lonmin, we committed to take on that responsibility for the legacies. We have made great strides in honoring the commitments made to the widows and the families. The planning that is currently underway for the construction of the memorial site is inclusive and considered. These have been some time in the making, but we understand that this is part of an extended healing journey, and the voices of those who were so tragically affected must be heard. I certainly hope and expect that by this time next year, we will be able to unveil the fruits of this collective thinking as a significant step towards securing closure. More than that, though, we have actively sponsored the Letsema process as part of an overall program of renewal for the Marikana society. The Letsema engagement process involves an independently facilitated, inclusive approach to engage with all stakeholders in the community through collaborative engagements. This will deliver tangible and sustainable benefits for all stakeholders with strong ownership by society. This engagement process effectively enables all stakeholders to come together to collectively shape a new destiny for the region. The Marikana renewal program supported by the Letsema process is, I believe, unlike any that has ever been sponsored by the private sector. It aims to come to terms with and learn from the tragedy, while actively building on the seeds of hope and reconciliation. For those who are not aware of the depth and breadth of the program, I urge you to look at the Marikana Renewal website to appreciate the scope that is being covered. I must emphasize that this is not a journey that we have traveled alone. We are very pleased to have received an overwhelmingly constructive response from those affected by the tragedy and those in the district who live under its shadow. I'm proud to say that Sibanye-Stillwater has stepped up and enabled this process, not because we have been compelled to do so or feel the need to gain recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. Again, I trust that our actions will speak for themselves. I have covered two of the fundamental pillars of our Marikana renewal program, honor and engage. I now want to talk about the third pillar, create. That is the most critical for shaping the future. You will have seen in the video that was shown earlier some of the work that we are doing at and around Marikana to create economic opportunity and undertake social reconstruction. This we do here and in all other parts of our operating footprint because it is the right thing. Since the inception of our Ndoni tree in 2013, under the banner of stakeholder capitalism, this Sibanye tree, which you can see in my backdrop, has provided a sound guide for our activities to create value and benefit all stakeholders. This was long before terms such as ESG and stakeholder capitalism became mainstream. We unreservedly acknowledge that the history of mining abounds with practices that damage the fabric of society in the interests of a few, but I firmly believe that we have learned since that era, not only over the last decade, but for a number of decades now, that mining must be conducted in a way that builds social and economic capital for all stakeholders. Doing the right thing is multifaceted and supported by programs directed in key areas, such as creating direct and indirect jobs and meaningful economic opportunity through targeted and developmental local procurement, constructing roads, schools, and other infrastructure, creating the capacity for teaching and learning and giving people lifelong skills. And by doing this in both a socially and environmentally responsible way, companies, and especially mining companies, have the capacity to drive change, to achieve social justice, and create enduring value. This is not philanthropy. This is good business. Practices that we preach and live by, with value creation for all stakeholders central to the success of our sustainable profit-making strategy. This brings me to the conversation of a socio-economic compact, a framework that those of you who know me is something I wholeheartedly support and believe in. We experienced the power of concerted action when we were faced with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic that has exerted a dominating influence over the past 2 years. With stakeholders working together to attain common goals, we navigated the pandemic through all its phases. As business, we fulfilled an active role in supporting the healthcare programs, providing relief from social distress, and setting up vaccination facilities that could serve community needs. We were successful in protecting both lives and livelihoods as best we could under the circumstances. We need much more of the same to address other pandemics that we are facing, such as the scourge of gender-based violence, the national economic crisis that results from low GDP growth, well below the levels required for a sustainable society. A social compact at its heart is the voluntary collaboration of entities in delivering social advancement and value. A socio-economic compact transforms the desire to do good into shared value through economic profitability. Responsible business will deliver social value, but their main and most important role in the ecosystem is to create the economic value that enables and drives shared value and social progress. Business is the engine of socio-economic development and progress. I say this again, as I've said before. In a socio-economic compact, we, as business, are the economic partners. Yes, of course, we support social good, but responsible economic value creation that benefits all stakeholders must be our primary focus as part of a flourishing and durable ecosystem. And it is in this socio-economic compact that I believe that we, as society, as citizens of this country, can find one another and deliver an outcome that can lead us from underperforming as a nation to good and even great. I'm hopeful and optimistic. Thank you.
Siyabonga, Neil. Thank you very much for sharing the roadmap of honoring the past, engaging in the present, and creating into our collective future. A reminder to our guests that today's program is an effort to share examples of some of the work initiated by Sibanye-Stillwater as catalyst of the renewal program. However, it is very important for guests to appreciate that we continue to invite partners into the renewal program to ensure that we are driving the right levels of partnerships at local, district, provincial, and of course within the region that we're operating. Part of this process is facilitated by the Letsema process, and as mentioned, they have 6 steps and that help us move from co-discover, who are we, co-initiate, where are we and how can we connect, co-inspire, what are we dealing with and what programs can we bring together, communicate, how can we organize the priorities as identified and communicated by the various stakeholders, to co-create, what are the programs we can then see in having identified the priorities that we can work together, join hands and deliver together, and all the way through to co-invest. What resources can we bring to the table to ensure successful delivery? I'd like to echo Neil's invitation for guests to join the Marikana Renewal site and visit on www.marikanarenewal.co.za. As mentioned today, that we would also continue with a flighting of the documentary titled Unwavering Strength, The Untold Marikana Story, a production by Bettina and award-winning director Sfiso Kanye. And with that, I'd like to extend the team, an invitation to the team for interested parties to join the work, to take and make our discussions real for the families, the youth of the families, and the communities as the key role players in and around Marikana. And to add another voice to the work and the journey that we've traveled, I would like to share this story with you all, and thank you again for joining us today. Team, over to you.
We're too close to each other. Even the day ahamba ngalo, the year azawushona ngayo, wayekhatshwa ndim ukubheka le stopini ndiyomgqibelisa kwi-hike. Very early in the morning, it was too cold that day. Masifika estopini, mna zange ndicela into yoba mna ndizohamba ndibheke etown, but masifika estopini wathi no, masihambe sibheke etown. Yabona, ufuna ukundithengela something, all to find out, ufuna undithengela the cell phone lena kudala ndandiyifuna ebomini bam that time. So i-relationship yam naye yayistrong kakhulu.
Kwaba buhlungu kakhulu dad ukusweleka kweCebisile, kwaba buhlungu kakhulu. Ndandilapha ekhaya ndafumana ifowuni yokuthi hayi uCebisile mandize la ekhaya, bakaba abantu abazonditshela ukuthi uCebisile akasekho. So kwakunzima kakhulu.
Mna ke bese ngasayibukeli kwala TV ibukelwa ngendlela abebulawa ngayo, ngathi kubulawa isilwanyana.
Ndandikhona phaa kulaa commission, so ke ndandivile phaa uba ubizwe ifemeli ubonise uba wadutyulwa lipolisa lo mntu ekule ndawo ejonge ngapha ebaleka yonke loo nto. So ke siye sayifumana ekubambeni kwesikhathi ukuthi hayi wadutyulwa ngamapolisa.
Ngoba kaloku ucinga uba nyhani ucinga umntana usemsebenzini uvise ekuthutshaneni. Kangaba ngoku kuthiwe kuze kuthiwa makuphinde omnye, ndathi nothiwa into engake kwakho igama elithi kuzawutywa ntoni.
ukungabikho kwakhe yabonakala indawo yakhe, you know. Kwafunyanzeleka into yokuba ngokuba let me step up now, you know, and try by all means and be on his shoes. It was never easy for me, yonke loo nto leyo, but I had to try my best because there are also my younger brothers who are now looking up to me now, you know, as ubhuti wabo omdala. Kwanyanzeleka into yokuba ngoku nam mandizame by all means uba mandikhule, both ngokwasengqondweni and nangokwasenyameni nje, physical soul.
Amandla ngumfana brave kakhulu ngathi ebeyingumuntu oyi-role model kwabanye abantwana. Abanye abantwana abaninzi apha babukele kuye yonke into. Umntana obe-active kakhulu.
Some of the initiatives that I'm currently doing now, especially emsebenzini, we embarked on the food security, whereby we provided 7 centers across all our operations. So we provided them with seedlings and the garden tools so that they can start to produce for themselves.
Umandla undijabulise kakhulu mna thina singabazali bakhe bekhaya, ngoba akasiphoxanga.
Mandla phansi kwento basingenamandla ngosikhathazwa impilo, asaqhubeke nokujongeka elikhaya lingapheli, ajonge abantu akwabo, ajonge yonke into lapho, benguye athenda yonke into ezabe lapho.
Umandla engase ndimbone enomuzi omuhle omkhulu, andibize, asibize noma kathi tata, mama, nansi umzi wami, cela nizobona, ndiwubone nanku umzi wami, umntwana wami, nditsho ke ndenze izinto namasiko wami, zonke izinto zasekhaya.
Onalisha imemory kabrother wami okokuqala nje kukumnikeza yonke inhlonipho endinayo mna ngaye. I want to develop my family and I want to develop my community. I just wish to see, you know, a healthy environment and a community where people live all together, you know, in harmony.